So how's your day been? What have you been up to today? What's the daily routine for Mr. Sean Plunket at the moment?
Alarm goes at 5.
Eesh.
I hit snooze for 5 minutes. Get up, get into the shower, make sure I got my keys, my watch, my laptop, get in the car, drive down to Manners Mall to work, get into the office, have a read of the newspapers, scan online, producers turn up, my technical producer and producer turn up at 6:15.
Yep.
And we make sure everything is lined up, tickety-boo, and we get ready to rumble at 7 o'clock in the morning, do 7 till 9, come off air, have a cup of coffee.
Little nap?
No, not at that time. And
Okay.
then I'm back into being chief executive for the company and the salesman for the company and trying to get the Auckland studio built. And about now is when I have, often in the office, a half-hour power nap.
Yeah.
And at 10:30, I have a meeting to set up the show for tomorrow and cast that around. Have another meeting at 2 with my breakfast producer to make sure we've got a show. And I don't know, then argue with someone, argue with the staff, hate some people online on Twitter, and I try and get out the door at about 5 or 6 or 7 and go home, have dinner, go to bed and start all over again. It's awesome.
It's a big day, yeah. It must be nice. I mean, I remember doing breakfast radio, nothing like it wasn't talk breakfast radio, but having witnessed a lot of talk breakfast radio at ZB, seeing those guys coming in at 3:34, like arriving at 4 in the morning. It must be nice having just that little extra hour of starting at 7 rather than 6.
I did 14 years of arriving at morning report at 4:30. You were out the door at pretty well 9 o'clock there, I must say.
Yeah.
I've never got my sleeping patterns back to normal after getting up at 100 for so long. So I've got to say, actually, I don't find the 5 o'clock alarm that horrendous. And
it's a sleep in.
Yeah,
it's
it
a
is.
sleep in for a normal radio breakfast person.
And the great thing is, as someone who occasionally suffers from insomnia, where I'm bored and unfocused, when I hit the pillow, I'm out these days. You know?
Yeah. I know what you mean about the sleeping cycles. I mean, I've done every radio shift through my career, but the longest stint I did probably in one thing was mid-dawns at ZB. I think I did it for 7 years, and that finished at 2011. And
I've never been sent to that sort of purgatory.
Yeah, no, I still today. Like, I struggle sometimes to get to sleep before 1 in the morning. I think it's because of that. When I was a student, I worked in petrol stations. I did mid-dawns. When I worked on Juice TV, I did sort of, I think it might have been 11 p.m. till 2 a.m.
Here's a trick for insomnia.
Yeah.
Just listen to replays of ZB or Today FM.
I'm lucky I'm not an insomnia person. I'm a brilliant sleeper. I've always said if I could figure out a way to get paid for sleeping, I would be a fucking millionaire.
I think because a lot of people are like that. A lot of people.
But I hit the pillow, and within 15 minutes every night I'm out. And I'm a power napper as well. Back in the day, that whole kind of 7-minute sleep around 3 p.m. and I'm going till midnight again. So the art of the sleep is one of the things I think I excel at. I just don't think I do it enough. That's my problem. Hey, well, it's lovely to talk to you. I mean, what we do here is, obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the platform and probably independent media and media in general. But what we typically do is kind of we just talk life, the universe, and everything, about whatever comes up. And although this is going to be released the day after the budget on Friday morning, we're recording it before the budget, and so it makes sense for me just to ask you, someone who's been in the thick of it in Parliament's halls, but also who's commentating on political things now. What do you think about what are your predictions for the budget, even though this is going to come out post-budget? What are you looking forward to, or what are you worried about?
Well, we're going to get some spending on health, which is long overdue, and the health sector, of course, has been under strain all through COVID. I would hope, and I get indications that mental health will be a particular part of that. And also, I think there is an expectation that midwifery and support for pregnant women is going to get a boost in education. I expect some boost to special education services for children and learners with disability and who have learning challenges. I think that is an area the government certainly wants to move on. No tax relief for the middle class, I don't think, in this budget. And a number of measures that are encouraging us to be, I don't know, save the planet, though I think the planet's doing all right as it is. This will not be the biggest spending budget of this administration. They will be keeping money in the tank for budget 2023 because that is the pre-election budget. That might be when they throw some lollies to students, they take the interest off the student loans. And my prediction is because the polls will be quite close then. In fact, I would expect the centre-right to be ahead on points poll-wise next year. That is going to be a really generous budget, is my imagine. But this is, look, the other thing is we are almost definitely heading into a recession.
Mm-hmm.
And Labor has to protect its core voters. And those are people who are lower paid and work in places like the education sector and the health sector. So that's where they're going to be focusing the money and the spend in this budget.
Although it's interesting worldwide, those traditional left parties, there's some research in America about the Democrats, about how working class are running from the Democrats in America. And I think you see that sometimes in New Zealand as well, looking at what's happening within political circles and what becomes sort of a foundational policy. Research, I'm sure you've seen it, the research out of America done by a couple of unions in purple states was saying if the foundation of a political party is not those simple, basic economic things we all need, then they run from it. And you hear people quite a lot saying this isn't the Labor Party that it used to be, but they also say this isn't the National Party that it used to be. You know, there's I guess politics in 2022, 2023 is different from what these National and Labor stood for in 1970.
They are both hunting for the centre. They are both hunting to be the big party in the centre, and that leaves room on the margins on the left for the Greens and on the right for ACT. I've got to say, I look at Lux and I think he's pretty woke, to use my parlance.
What do you see in him that makes you that? Like what?
Oh, he just is. He's a softie. And I saw Simon Bridges' valedictory speech in Parliament, and he wasn't saying it directly to Luxon. He said, politics takes leadership. You have to be bold and stand by the people who are backing you. You mustn't be in fear of polls. You mustn't act like a robot or an automaton. It's not all about compromise and being all things to all people. And he was really pressing the message that he thought, and my takeout was that he thought Luxon was a poll-driven fruitcake.
Wow.
Okay, and Luxon has been very careful around issues like co-governance, issues like the environment, not to alienate, the climate Nazis, not to alienate the two forms of government in New Zealand who gives a damn about democracy. You try and find, the one thing that we know Luxon stands for is tax cuts, but that's nothing new in a National Party leader, right?
No.
And they've created this new political catchment called the squeezed middle class.
Yep, that's their quote for this next 12 months. I've heard it so many times already in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, so squeezed middle class is what they're trying to create, and then they're going to try and convince people that they are the squeezed middle class. I think a lot of people are the squeezed middle class, but I equally think, and you're right, that underneath the squeezed middle class are a bunch of hardworking, and most of them do have jobs, hardworking New Zealanders who want their kids to have a good education. They want to have a functional health system. They want to pay their taxes. They do not want to be ram-raided, their businesses to be ram-raided. They don't want to live in fear of gangs. They don't want to pay for gangs to get off drugs when they went on drugs in the first place. And to be honest, and this sounds brutal, they don't want a government and a news media that tells them they need to learn Māori or another language and that they are intolerant racists. That's what those people underneath the squeezed middle class are getting angry about, that they're constantly being told that they're racist and that there's institutional racism or systemic racism, or that they are the sons, daughters, granddaughters of colonialist pigs, etc. I think Labor's traditional supporters are well over that, and that's why the tide's going out for them. I don't
necessarily. Well, let me because we run in different circles, which means we have different echo chamber and we hear and see different things.
Yeah,
because that's not what I hear. Like, probably I would be the squeezed middle if If they gave me the criteria for what that was, that would probably be me, right? From where I sit in the world. I don't hear any of that commentary from people. I hear commentators.
No, you don't, because you've got a mainstream media that's absolutely dominated by telling you the government is great and this is the way the new world is, and it's full of millennials.
I'm not talking about what I'm hearing from that. I'm talking about from my peers, from my friends, from people around me, from people I interact with. I'm not getting the sense, like you said, being forced to learn to speak Māori. I mean, I've never even heard that as a extrapolation from a policy. Where does it even come? Like, I've never heard anyone say that.
That comes from people, and many of the Māori who sit down and watch One News or listen to Radio New Zealand, or are sitting in a airport departure area, and hear words and hear places in New Zealand referred to in Māori language in te reo, and they do not understand what the hell is going on.
So that equals forced to learn Māori.
No. That's what happens in their heads. That's the cognitive dissonance, right? There's that I'm being forced to learn Māori, or I'm being forced to speak Māori. It's not particularly an enlightened or rational view, but it is a very wide-held view, and it is one that I get from people and underlying from people, and I would not say even the great unwashed.
But when you
somehow feel that there is now that because of particularly the state funding of media, that and the requirement that you recognise the treaties of the Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, which most people can't tell you, and that you have diversity in your newsroom and in your media organisation. A lot of people feel their media has abandoned them and is basically propagandizing to them. And they're peeved. They're peeved.
What I'd love to delve into, though, and I hear you, because I consume media on a daily from every aspect of the political spectrum, from every part of the world. And one of the things I just took away from what you said is what they feel. They feel like, and the reality is they may feel that, but they might be wrong. Like, they feel like the media
doesn't
is
matter.
doing this.
In politics and perception. And in popular culture, the feeling is the reality.
But we're talking about media. We're talking about media, and we're talking about what the media is doing. They feel like the media is doing this. That doesn't mean they are. And I wonder if
their reaction. But look at the surveys. Look at the stuff that came out just a couple of days ago from some bunch of woke academics up at Vic. They said that in terms of consumption of information on the internet during the time of the protest, the weird, fringy, non-journalistic counterspins and other places like that were getting more hits than the mainstream media news sites. So we reached the tipping point.
That's actually not what they said, just to be fair.
Okay, what did you tell me?
They said because I did the story last night in our daily news show. They said on one day there was more views to those videos than there was. But that was on one day. That doesn't mean, how you just said it was like, they're more popular and they're bigger than the mainstream. What the actual report said was, I think it might have been February the 11th, if my memory's right.
Okay, but how many days did they survey, Pat?
I don't know. But they didn't say it was the
And
whole
I
time.
tried to get them on to interview about it, and they wouldn't front for me, which wasn't much bloody use, because that was the question I wanted to ask.
Yeah. I mean, but look, all I want to always do, and this has nothing to do with what you just said, is I always try and at least be fair, as you guys seem to want to be on platform and give accurate information. So the accurate information was the report said on one day, more videos were watched from those disinformation groups than by the mainstream media. That was the accurate.
And I actually wanted to interrogate all that research and why they did it and why they presented it that way, but they wouldn't front.
Yeah. Why do you think
this is part, and I would say also, Pat, that is part of a narrative by mainstream media and the government and woke agencies of state to support the idea that there needs to be more censorship and that alternative views outside the mainstream are dangerous and they're all racists or white supremacists or idiots, And that is part of the narrative. And I spend most of my time in Wellington and talking, interacting with people in Wellington. That is the narrative that is being created by mainstream media. I was watching TV1 News last night, and they had 3 reporters lined up to talk about the upcoming budget. And they were all women. There's nothing wrong with that. But I thought, man, that doesn't look diverse. Where's the bloke? There were no blokes. We've got to have people of the right colour or the right gender or the right sexual orientation to show how woke we are. And no one's really worried about the messages they convey or whether or not they're fundamentally doing good jobs as journalists, broadcasters, and communicators.
There's so much to unpack already in our conversation. But can I just ask you a very simple question? Because you've probably used it 12 times in our first.
Oh, woke. Yeah,
minutes.
I love that because it just pisses woke people off. I've hardly used it at all on the radio.
Sure. But all I'd like to know is, what do you mean by woke? Like, can you define that for me as you see it?
Yes,
so then I understand what you're talking about.
Okay. When I say woke, it is someone who engages in identitarian politics.
Yeah.
Who is intolerant of anyone who does not share the same soft left liberal views that they do, who is likely to scream racist. They're more likely to be white than Māori. They are likely to scream racist or offence on behalf of other people, on behalf of the poor, or peoples of different ethnicity. They will always take offence on someone else's behalf, on someone else's behalf. They are most likely from a comfortable middle-class background. They've had a good education. Their parents are earning good money, and they in their lives will probably never financially face any challenge whatsoever. And it gives them the luxury of being right all the time and despising people who gather on Parliament's lawn confused to have a protest. Right? That's essentially...
Okay.
Are you getting the picture?
Well,
and Barack Obama's used the term. He says... we've got that in one of our promos.
I'm not saying you shouldn't use the term. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's good to understand what you mean by it, because people use words.
Someone who feels guilty that their grandfather had a farm that may have been Maori land and is going to write columns about how they've come to a new realization and New Zealand must deal with its past.
So here's the thing, yeah? What you've just described is probably 1/10 of 1% of the population, if that. I mean, that doesn't fit you mentioned the
get
woke
on social media, I'd say, and get inside the inner workings of the Labour Party and the power elite in Wellington, and it's 80% of them.
So I like to adhere to the Dave Chappelle
standard. It's people who put him and her on their pronouns on their social media profiles.
I understand what you're saying. It always seems ironic to me that the people who put him and
her
on their
pronouns. So let's add up all the people who get outraged and screamed racist, all the people who get offended about issues which they aren't personally involved in, all the people who put him and her on their pronouns, on their letterheads and in their social media. And I think we're getting more than just, 0.1% of the New Zealand population. So, and if the cap fits, wear it, right?
I don't necessarily agree with that.
And I'm not saying it about you.
No. Look, trust me. There's no way anyone could offend me if they did. I'm unoffendable. There's no issues with that, Sean. You've just kind of given another definition to it. So now the woke thing could be one of 40 categories from all the things. If you're saying you have to be all of these things to be woke, it's a very small percentage. If you're saying it can be any one of these things, so if someone's got him, her, then that means they're woke. If someone,
hang on, just let me silence this. Sorry, I just got.
Hey, that's not free speech. What are you silencing things for?
Sean? Oh, no, someone was calling me, and I was getting my phone going. Yeah.
Just don't let them know that you hung up on them, because they will be at you for censoring them at the wrong time, Sean. So what I'm saying is, if it's all of those 20 or 30 things you just listed, as any one of these categories connected, you're woke. Or if it's all of them, you have to be all of these things combined, it's very small. Now, if someone puts him, her, look, I don't disagree with you necessarily about the he, her, him, her, because the thing about the him, her on my Twitter bio is not on mine, because I don't have it on mine. But
it's also people who got outraged about the Nadia Lim comments by Simon Henry without seeing the context.
As I was going to say, the him, her thing on Twitter bios, most people seem to put that up there who don't need to, because they are obviously male or female, and everyone would assume that they're him and her. Yeah. The people who are in that non-binary world or that transgender world, they don't typically seem to put those things on their Twitter bio. Some may. So look, I get it. But when you add all those things, so now it's almost the opposite. When you said your first list of things, if you were saying it needs to be all of these things, it's a very small percentage.
I didn't say you need to be all of those things.
That's why I'm clarifying, Sean. And if now you're saying it can be any one of these 20 categories, it might be 60% of the population. But then how that lead you to the idea that Christopher Luxon is a bit woke? Where does he fit into that description for you?
A bit woke, you see. So there's a graduation there. It's not black and white.
Sure.
He rejects some of the positions that Seymour takes. So Seymour is pushing him hard on issues like co-governance. Would seem to me that Luxon doesn't really want to engage in that debate.
So is Seymour the example that we want? Is Seymour the anti-woke example that you would hold up if you were writing a dictionary?
No, not particularly. but he occupies a part of the political spectrum, and he seems prepared. Though, look, he can be. I know that he is a guy who thinks quite hard politically, and sometimes doesn't say what he thinks or moderates what he thinks for electoral purposes. I mean, he's a politician, so of course he's going to lie. I think he's trying to drag Luxon or guilt Luxon into not being hard line on things, but being more definitive about some of the cultural issues, if you like, abroad. And there's no doubt there's a culture war on, not just in New Zealand, but all over the world. And it's being fought largely through media or social
give me an
media.
example of someone who's not woke then. Because it seems to me that, I'm not saying you've said this, that if you wanted to, you could find an
I don't think Michael
character
Laws is woke. Michael Laws certainly isn't woke. Who else isn't woke? I don't think I'm particularly woke. I don't think Mike Hoskins is woke. I don't think Simon, if we talk about media people, I don't think Simon Dallow is woke.
Well, Simon Dellow's nothing. He's neither, because he don't. I don't mean nothing in a bad way. I love Simon. I've worked with him, but he doesn't give an opinion.
He's a perfect newsreader. He's neutral.
Yeah.
Though apparently he doesn't talk lezzy.
I don't know what that
He was
means.
once asked if he saw his ex-wife, Alison Moore, if they bumped into each other or he bumped into her with her girlfriend at the kids' weekend sport. And he was quoted somewhere saying, "I don't talk to them. I don't speak lezzy."
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. But, and he'd never put him, her in his pronouns. Who else isn't woke? I think there aren't many woke people in the National Caucus. There aren't many woke people in my office or on my broadcast team. But, okay, look, it is a term that I do not tend to apply unless there is a specific story to anyone specific. But I like it as a term because we're talking about it and we're engaged and we're talking about the culture war. So in some ways it is a means to an end. But I'm okay with the word woke because Barack Obama is happy to use it. And Barack Obama has used it in the context of people who sit there active on social media or who virtue signal. That's the other part of wokeness, and go around saying, look at what I've done. Look at how cool and with it I am. Look at how tolerant I am. Look at how diverse I am.
Sean, you're an incredibly intelligent, gifted broadcaster and smart man and good businessman. But to be fair, to say that I'm okay with word X because person Y uses it is such a nonsense reason behind it. So are you okay with the N word? Are you going to use that because lots of high profile people use the N word? Are you going to be blasting that all over the place?
I don't think, and this isn't being woke, I think it is a word that has absolutely negative and terrible connotations. I
Sounds
know
pretty
that
woke to me.
Certain ethnicities use it. I wouldn't use the C word in polite company. You know, communist. I'd never say communist.
So you're moderating yourself.
I self-moderate, but I don't go around telling people that I wouldn't use the N word.
But one of the things you were saying about Seymour before was his self-moderation seemed to be a bit of a, he's not as good as he's, but you're self-moderating yourself there, Sean, on some level.
Oh, I'm trying, but also I don't want to moderate often. I want to engage people and outrage people and have them have an opinion about me. And we had a very funny thing with, it'll be the day before yesterday now. I'm trying to time check our broadcast. And I was at Monday came and everyone was going on about this bloody World Health Organization pact on pandemics.
Right.
And there's a certain proportion of my audience and followers who have certain, I would say, extreme views about conspiracies and one world government and Bill Gates and stuff. And I kind of batted a few pieces of correspondence off. I came out into the office and I had people in the office going, "This is a big deal, Sean, this pact. This is a big deal." I said, "Well, we're not covering it. It's just whack job conspiracy stuff." And then they all looked a bit shocked at me. I went away and I had a cigarette because I'm still smoking. I came back and I said, "Okay, we're going to cover it. Put it online. We're going to cover the WHO pandemic pact on the program tomorrow." And they all go, "Oh, yay, that's fantastic." I said, "But be warned, I may not cover it the way you want me to."
Sure.
So then I look back and I said, and everyone said, "Oh, basically Bill Gates and Joe Biden are going to take over the world through this pact that destroys our national sovereignty." So I did what all the conspiracy nutters constantly tell me to do. I went and did my homework. I did some research online, and I didn't look at the charlatans who've got millions of hits and everything, I went and I searched for the text of the draft and for the process. It will be 2024 before the first draft of the proposed pandemic pact from the WHO even gets considered by the WHO. There is 18 months of consultancy with various governments. It's all done through the UN. So it's not today Joe Biden is creating one world government through the WHO. And then people said, oh, we don't agree with international pacts that rob us of our sovereignty. So I went back and thought, let's look at some other international pacts that rob us of our sovereignty, right? The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Arms Treaty, which we're part of, means you haven't got the sovereignty to build a nuke in your backyard in New Zealand.
Yeah.
International treaties on child slavery means I can't keep 6-year-olds in my basement doing my housekeeping and not pay them.
Yeah.
I can't build landmines or anti-personnel mines in New Zealand and spread them around the world. I can't make chemical weapons.
Yeah.
I can't trade people as slaves. And I was just trying to get, the pearl-clutching conspiracy anti-vax people to say, look, don't lose your lunch. Actually do your research and don't be led round the nose by the charlatans of the internet. And we did that. That's how I covered it. I got Robert Patman on, a professor in international relations, to explain how international treaties can be very, very good. And the World Health Organization is not some sinister part of the Illuminati. It was formed in 1948. It works under the umbrella of the United Nations, and it was formed to fight malaria, tuberculosis, and venereal disease. And my audience, a certain segment of my audience, went crazy at me. And my inbox was full with people saying, I'm gonna cancel the platform app and I'll never listen to you again. You said you were open, tolerant, and free, and I let anyone ring in, and say what they thought. But they got to give me the freedom to say, on this issue, you are behaving like a moron.
Let's jump into this idea of the platform and being open, tolerant, and free, shall we? I've got your page up here, and I'm going to play a little bit of the trailer. I mean, we'll play all the trailer so people can see what we're talking about. I'm sure everybody already knows. You've got it on your T-shirt and your hat, and it's in the background. And but this is your YouTube channel as well, and this is the promo for the platform that came out 10 days ago. Let's have a listen.
Facts, dialogue, honest conversation, vital elements in a functioning democracy. Used to be, we had news media who were committed to telling you the truth, giving you all sides of the story, telling you what you needed to know so you could make up your own mind, and not taking sides themselves. All that has changed. Who can you trust in this rapidly changing world? Most Kiwi media are overseas owned. Most are taking government money that comes with strings attached. If they don't like what you say, you're cancelled. But now, there is a place where you can resist, get and share views that are honest and real. It's talk radio, it's honest opinions, it's free media. Join the resistance.
So there you go. There's the detail.
Good, eh?
People want to check out for it. Yeah, it's interesting.
You know that I'm the copywriter, I'm the advertising department. This is all me.
Is that Queenstown, by the way? It looks like Queenstown.
I don't know. We've got to swap those pictures out, actually.
Yeah.
They haven't done that, or I haven't done that yet.
It is. It's Queenstown because the golf course, the golf course.
Yeah, well, we do have studios down in Central Otago.
Yeah. So I hear.
Well, a studio. Yeah.
I'm really interested in the concept of what you're doing. Obviously, I'm doing some independent media as well. Nothing to the kind of same scale as what you're doing with your backing and that kind of stuff. It's very much just sort of us doing it by ourselves with trying to bootstrap it, so to speak. But there's a couple of things from that promo that I'm interested in, like talking about the
first thing, Pat. Can we just get it straight before we talk about this? That's an ad, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Meaning what? That one of the questions I'm.
Well, it's an ad. It's an ad. It's a piece of marketing, like every other piece of marketing you see.
Sure.
You know.
So I was thinking about the being cancelled thing. Do you see the being cancelled thing as more something that happens Now that we've expanded this conversation around woke, I feel like probably, as per your definition, 99% of the community is woke now compared to the other, because they probably think it feels a little bit. It feels a little bit like what you're saying is, if you disagree,
it's a movable feast. It's a movable feast.
If you disagree with my perspective, exactly,
you're woke.
then
That's,
you're somewhat
actually
woke.
That's probably the best definition we can come up with. That if I disagree with you, you're woke. I like that.
I'm happy, even though there's a little bit of tongue in cheek. You know what Shakespeare said about truth and jest. It seems to me also the word woke is just the new PC. 15 years ago, you're PC, you're PC. Now it's you're woke. And that everyone can have an opportunity to fall into that gap. The cancel thing I'm interested in, though, because I'm pretty sure I heard you with Mr. Peacock the other day on Media Watch. I listened to it on Sunday morning. And I think that you said that you were cancelled.
I've been cancelled a couple, or there have been attempted cancellations of me a few times.
So explain that to me. How were you cancelled?
Oh, you work in media. You say something, not necessarily controversial. I got cancelled when I was on the BSA, essentially. I get appointed to the Broadcasting Standards Authority by the Governor-General appoints on the recommendation of then Minister of Broadcasting, Maggie Barry. I go along to my first meeting and they say, we've had this Action Station petition online against you. I said, yeah. And they said, and a lot of people are commenting online that they don't like you being on the BSA. And I said, well, show these things to me. Oh, we haven't collated them. I said, well, you probably better have. And they said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, ignore them. It is just, the woke. The woke's at Action Station, which is a well-funded, foreign-funded, overseas left-wing agitation body that hides as being something different when it's not really. But at the end of the day, I sat around in a boardroom and it was quite clear that they were completely shell-shocked. And I said, well, you can't fire me, but I'm clearly not going to make the boat go faster, so I will resign. And then they asked me how they would handle that in the media. So I wrote them a media strategy in about 3 minutes. But that was a cancellation. I was cancelled at Magic Talk by Vodafone and the executive of MediaWorks. I was literally rating well, no controversy, one finding by the BSA against something I'd said, which is actually a finding against MediaWorks that had been months earlier. One finding against me in 37 years of broadcasting, but I was given no reason. I was hauled in the Friday before Waitangi weekend, and I was told not to come back to work. And I was given no reason.
Did you take legal action on that?
I decided, no, I didn't have to take legal action, actually. I settled, and I was released from my contract, paid for the rest of it, given some money for the fact that it annoyed me, and I can't go into any further details.
Okay, but so you're saying, and obviously because you can't go into details, we're going to have to take grain of salt. You're saying they released you from your contract and paid you out on some level, and then whatever else.
Yeah,
in other words,
and never gave me the reason, and it was left to my own devices. And I can talk about this because I talked to sources I trust, and I found that from board level, Vodafone had approached MediaWorks and said, we've got rid of Banks, and I thought Banksy deserved to go, even though he was just filling in and wasn't even being paid by MediaWorks. Banksy made a mistake that was worthy of being taken off air. Vodafone had just a week or two earlier released this woke ethical advertising thing. We're going to look at the people we advertise with, and if we don't think they're woke enough, we won't advertise with them. They approached, I think there was a pretty nasty little campaign by David Farrier, who wrote to the chief executive, Cam Wallace, saying what a rotten man I was. And David Farrier seems to have some weird obsession with me. And then I find out that fundamentally Vodafone have rung Cam Wallace. Vodafone didn't advertise on Magic Talk, and they didn't advertise on my show. And they said, we're going to pull all. In fact, I went into the meeting that I had where I was told I was no longer wanted. And the first thing this person said to me was, you know that Vodafone are going to pull all their advertising. And I said, well, why tell me? I'm not in sales, and they don't advertise on Magic. And the next line was, you're just too hot to handle. I'm sorry. And I said, who says I'm too hot to handle? Don't come in Monday. That's how you get cancelled, Pat.
Could be a compliment
That's
on some levels.
Cancelled.
Too hot to handle. I think
Pat, would you agree that's cancellation?
I think that this is what I wanted to talk about. When I think about being cancelled, right, that term, I think about the things like, and I've podcasted with Megan Murphy. I have a pretty good relationship with her. We communicate every couple of months over the internet, and she's someone I have interactions with. She said something that wasn't against a ruling from Twitter. The following week, they brought in a ruling, and they retrospectively took her off and banned her for life.
Yep, it was like the BSA decision against me. For the first time, they held in a cultural advisor.
Yeah, but I struggle with that one. I struggle with that one, Sean. The reason I struggle with that, and I'm not saying it wouldn't have ended up being that way because you resigned. You just said here you resigned. Now I get that you're saying
no. I'm talking about the BSA finding against me over my interviews over the vigilante roadblocks.
Okay, no, sorry, I thought you were meaning
in lockdown one.
Your first example.
The only time I've been pinged by the BSA, they went and hired a cultural advisor because they couldn't actually nail me for a straight out breach of broadcasting codes. And then they introduced this new thing that I'd done a very robust interview. And that robust interview could lead to the denigration of a protected or disadvantaged group, being Maori. Yeah. It was a groundbreaking and disturbingly groundbreaking new ruling from the Broadcasting Standards Authority. And I would add that the broadcaster, in this case me, or the individual broadcaster, has no legal representation at a BSA hearing.
Right.
It is the company they work for that broadcasts their work that pays for the lawyers. I don't have a seat at the table as an individual.
Okay. So just to rewind a bit, the reason I said the BSA was I said I was struggling. I was talking about the example you gave of being cancelled where you resigned. Yeah. Now, I know what you're saying because you're probably saying if I had have stayed, they would have pushed me out. But as someone who's, again, I want to be fair and I want to be accurate, I struggle to think someone's been cancelled when they resigned. The example of you and Magic Talk, I'm thinking about that out loud and I'm thinking, so if they had have let you stay...
when you're sitting in a board meeting and no one else on that board will proceed with the business of the day until you resign, and they don't have the power to fire you, what else can you do if you want to make that boat go faster? And I fell on my sword because I, to a certain extent, then believed in the...
Yeah, look, I get it. And we don't need to... I'm not actually debating you on what you think or what hasn't been cut. I'm just thinking it out loud as we're talking, right?
Yeah.
And as for the Magic Talk one, if they had have kept you on air and then not renewed your contract at the end of that year and told you then it was because of Vodafone, would that have made any difference?
Well, I suppose I wouldn't have gone through the trauma of losing my livelihood and my job and all the people I work with and my friends at a place overnight, not having farewell drinks, not being able to say goodbye to anyone, having it written in the media and it damaged my reputation that I was going because I was a racist when there was actually no reason given, that I was once again a controversial or difficult broadcaster, so it damaged my reputation. But I have to look back and say to Jason Paris, the head of Vodafone, thank you. Because for the first time in my life, I decided the only way I can do what I want to do properly is do it for myself and build something new.
So what I asked was, if you had got to the end of your contract and they then hadn't renewed your contract, but they said to you, and I'm not saying this would happen, but they said, we're not renewing your contract because of Vodafone, would that have still been, you consider that would still being a cancelled situation? Because I'm trying to figure out is the cancellation because they took you off air.
Vodafone. I should have sued Vodafone for what's called tortious interference. They interfered they interfered. And look, I've said this lots of times, Pat, you're not going to get sued for it. They've never stuck the lawyers on me. They've just said, oh, no, it's not true.
Well, if they were
right, if it wasn't true, you don't even have to say allegedly. If it wasn't true, they would have sued my ass by now.
Oh, look, to be honest, if Vodafone sued me, it'd probably be good publicity for what we're trying to do at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, no, what I'm trying to figure out, right, to be fair to you, is do you consider that to be cancelled because you got taken off air straight away? Or do you consider that to be cancelled because of Vodafone's intervention? If they had intervened at the end of your contract and because of them you had been taken off air in the hypothetical, would that have still been cancelled?
Well, in this game, it would have been clear 3 months out whether or not I was going to be renewed. That's the way this rather brutal business works. I would have been looking for a job, would have been out there. It would have been the trauma.
But you said you were paid out. But if you got paid out, that whole kind of financial thing doesn't really make sense to me, because if you got,
it's not about finance. It's not. I certainly wasn't doing magic talk for the money. I'll tell you that much. It is about reputation.
All right, because here's the thing, right?
Reputation.
With this kind, I can see clearly the idea of cancel culture when it comes to the Twitter thing with Megan Murphy. I get it, right? 100%. There, I can see it, understand. When it comes to like a business and an employee and that, what I want to figure out, and I'm not saying you and I are going to figure this out, but this is part of my journey of being working it out, is, I mean, you'll be a free market guy, yeah? You're a free market guy, I'm sure.
No, I don't have any strong politics.
So you don't believe in sort of supply and demand, you know, the
I believe that the one thing I believe in is democracy and one person, one vote, and whatever that delivers is up to that system.
Okay. But I mean, obviously you're a businessman, you understand profit margins.
No, I wouldn't call myself a businessman at all. That's been the most horrifying thing.
Yeah, I've started what are you talking about? You're the CEO of a company.
Yeah, the CEO, I'm a director, I'm the breakfast announcer, I'm the sales guy.
Do you make the tea? Do you make the cups of tea as well?
Sometimes I do, actually, and I fill the dishwasher and I empty the dishwasher and sometimes I vacuum the floor. And every desk in this office has been put together by me with a set of Allen keys.
And
I never want to see an Allen key.
Do you rally against
those? I'm not a businessman.
Okay, well, but here's the question though. Where's the difference between like a free market, a business being able to decide what's best for them and their financial future and their shareholders and their investors, and where is cancellation? Where is that line? Like if MediaWorks did what was best for their investors, let's just say hypothetically, and it helped their profit margin, because that's what a business is primarily about, most businesses.
Well, it hasn't,
and it impacted you.
It hasn't, Pat. They destroyed the Magic Talk audience, and Today FM is in the gutter. Ratings
so you could argue they made a mistake, but
and I told them at the time.
Yeah, sure, but as the business, but as the business owners, as the business owners, what I'm trying to say, and please don't get me twisted, I'm not suggesting that I'm not even saying that you're wrong on the cancel thing. I'm saying for me, I'm trying to figure out like the Colin Kaepernick's a really good example of being cancelled, yet he's making more money now than he ever did, because you know he's a spokesperson for this whole thing as well. So financially, it's been good for him to move out. And I just wonder so much when when society, when people use these phrases and terms, and like, for example, so many people think cancel culture is a thing of the left. It's utter horseshit. Cancel culture is a thing of all demographics. I've even done it before we got on, in case this conversation came up. You know, I looked at right wingers calling for boycotts, and there's hundreds of them, including the most recent Florida Republicans calling to cancel, to boycott Disney. You know, Times conservatives have rallied against
left or right wing cancel culture sucks.
Yeah, because but what I'm saying is
it's an end of debate, and it's not saying let's work this out, let's find compromise. It is, if I don't agree with you, whether I'm on the left or the right, I'm just going to whack you. I'm going to take you out. I'm going to take you out financially or take you out. But you haven't been taken out. You weren't taken out financially because they paid you out. You haven't been taken out because at the end of your contract, maybe they would have moved you on anyway. And look, I know about being moved on at the end of contracts. Look at another one.
And now you're doing your own thing.
Look at Marty Devlin. Look at Martin Devlin.
Yep.
He got taken out. He got cancelled.
Well,
but he's back. He got taken out to the point where he sat in his car in the garage, put a hose through the window, closed the garage door, and turned on the ignition, Pat.
Well, it's a tough conversation, because I'd actually have invited Marty on a few times to come on the podcast. And I mean, I always say things like the stories I've read. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily they're 100% accurate. And the only person I can speak to about that would be Marty. But if he assaulted someone, if that is accurate...
He didn't assault anyone. And I'm going to really strongly say here, don't you dare frickin' say that. What happened to Marty was the management at NZME decided he didn't fit the woke new world that they were creating, and there was a witch hunt against him.
Excuse
me, was he prosecuted for assault, Pat?
No.
No, thank you.
So
did NZME want his employment relations case to be held in secret, and they settled with him out of court when the court said, no, we're not giving you that protection, NZME.
Hang on, just take a breath for a sec, Sean. I'm incredibly happy for you to share everything you want to share and bring light to this, right? And that's why I said very clearly, what I've read is, and I actually preface that by
Yeah,
saying
okay.
I'm not saying
And
it's
what
accurate.
I'm saying
Just hang on.
passionately,
No. Let me
what I'm
me
saying
finish.
passionately,
No, I'm
because
not
he's a
cutting you
friend of
short.
mine, and
Sean,
I believe in him, and I
Look,
I don't know what happened legally, but I know the guy, and I'm sick and tired of people coming up to me surreptitiously saying, "Oh, that Marty Devlin must be a bit of a worry." And
Listen.
they are working off rumor and innuendo, and I'm sorry, I will not tolerate it.
Listen, Sean, I'm more than happy for us to go into this. But what
Yeah.
I'm not okay with is you jumping down my throat implying what I'm
Okay.
doing. What I
Okay.
said, listen, what I said very clearly is basically, and I'm bringing it up,
Yeah.
that media reported. Now, I also preface that by saying whether it's true or not, I don't know. So that's what I reported. And I just brought up the Stuff article there to show you this is not an opinion of mine. This is not something, this is not scuttlebuggery or rumor from me. This is what's being seen.
Yeah, the
Stuff
article.
What,
the Stuff article, which kind of says it all.
Sure. So what I was saying was, if that was an event that happened, then of course someone's going to be removed from a workplace. If it wasn't, and there's other stuff, which is what you're alluding to, maybe that's a conversation. My difficulty is I'm not the kind of person who will jump in and get what you're saying is absolute truth, what Stuff's saying is absolute truth, what maybe Marty, but then again, even that, if you've got a bias because you've got an investment as absolute truth, I'm saying that, was he cancelled? Well, I would like to figure that out for myself. I'd love to talk to Marty about it. I'd love to have him on the podcast. I've approached him several times. He hasn't been available, which is fine. I'm not entitled to anybody's time. But the answer to your question, was he cancelled, was, well, it depends on the circumstances. I don't know those circumstances, so I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you're
just
welcome
because
to
you
respond
read
now.
something
Go
in
for it.
Stuff, or indeed the Herald these days, and this is the problem, this is where we kind of started the conversation,
Yep.
doesn't make it true.
I agree with you.
And given the culture of the newsrooms of most mainstream media in this country, it almost definitely, on issues like this, makes it untrue.
Well, then
And that's why the platform exists. Because I am sick and tired of seeing people who are decent from all sorts of works of life being vilified by media who don't explore, social media and Twitter pile-ons. They encourage them, and they seem to delight in them.
The idea of the Twitter thing, I was going to say this earlier, but I think we went sideways. I like to adhere to the Dave Chappelle standard, where he goes, I don't give a fuck because Twitter's not a real place. That's that's the verbiage I tend to adhere to when it comes to Twitter. I've got Twitter. I like Twitter. I put my clips out on Twitter. I like looking around Twitter, but it's not a real place. So when you say
my best stuff on Twitter never gets any traction. I was in Wellington on Tuesday, and I just tweeted, "Why are all these young people wandering around Wellington dressed like Harry Potter?" Now, it was graduation day, Pat.
Oh.
And I thought that was brilliant. Nothing. Nada. 4 likes. Okay,
Yeah.
fell off, and that hurt me.
Yeah, it's pretty good. That's a pretty good tweet.
No,
Yeah,
if I have to explain, if you have to explain it,
no
good.
Yeah, no. The other thing, just to finish this Marty Devlin conversation, was equally so. Did he then do them for defamation if that's not what happened? Because you said, was there an assault charge? No. Well, then the equal and opposite of that was, is there a defamation charge? And if the answer is no to that, then we're still left from this side, not from your side because you know him, but from this side going, I don't know.
We'll put it this way. Martin hasn't been charged with any crime. But the fact is that people believe he assaulted someone. Other people quite wrongly and erroneously believe that he somehow behaved sexually inappropriately in the workplace. But I say if an organization is out to get you and out to get rid of you for whatever reasons it has, they've got a pretty weak case if they are reduced to finding someone whose stapler you didn't give back to them 3 years earlier.
Right.
Right? If that ends up before the Employment Relations Court, your employer is reaching.
Yeah. Yeah. If that's what you're saying literally happened, I have no knowledge of. I don't know. I didn't know what the Employment Court.
I'm just putting the hypothetical. Yeah. You can tell I'm not party to any settlement that Mr. Devlin made with his then employer, but I'm very, very, very happy to have him with me.
Look, and I love Marty. I mean, I never really worked with Marty, but obviously I was in ZB when he was in Radio Sport, and I loved Radio Sport, and I loved his commentary on there, sort of thing. So he's not. There's no bee in the bonnet for me. But,
and man, he is just on fire at the moment. He really is doing great radio, great sport talk radio. It's remarkable.
Out of interest, what do you? I mean, maybe it's technicality. Why do you call it radio? Is it still radio if it doesn't have an FM
I
transmission?
have been struggling with this, and I don't know. Is it stream? We've got to come up with a new word. Actually,
broadcast.
I don't know what it is. And then people said those are podcasts, the highlights that we take that we have the vision of, because we can gather vision in all our studios and store it for 30 days and edit it within the system. And I actually have been sitting there. We call it video social or pod social. I don't know, Pat.
Yeah, okay.
No one's ever quite defined it. You should have seen the negotiations we had with APRA and the recorded music industry about playing songs. They had no template for us licensing. That was a really weird negotiation.
But I know what you're saying, because I do it at the moment. I'm doing this daily news show, Big Hairy News, we call it. I sent you a link. I don't know if you got a chance to check it out at all.
Haven't had a chance yet.
That's
but
right.
I'm going to.
That's right. And I do this, which is a podcast, even though we're videoing it, because it's most of the people who interact with this is on the audio.
Well, what's a podcast? How do you define a podcast?
I think a podcast for me still has to be audio. So this is
just audio.
Well, no, because this does both, right? This one does both.
Yeah,
this does audio and video.
Yeah.
So this one, you don't have podcasts on YouTube unless someone uploads just the audio and has a static image. So this is a podcast that we're videoing as opposed to being a broadcast that's in audio.
It's all just stuff, really, isn't it?
Yeah. No, look, I agree, because I was going to say I do the same thing.
So maybe I should just say it's stuff with pictures, it's stuff with audio, it's stuff you
radio
can read.
with pictures. This is my podcast. Yet, if you tune in tonight at 10 o'clock, we'll be live streaming from this same studio, the same background, and that will be my live stream, because it's not a podcast, because we're doing daily news stories. It's a different thing. Now, if I then turn that into a audio content, which I'm not doing at the moment because I don't have any more time as a one-man operator, but if it was, then it would be a podcast. So I don't know. I was just wondering about the term radio, and is that a coverall now for radio?
I don't know.
Broadcasts?
And to be honest, I wasn't too hung up. I mean, honestly, Pat, I had no idea what I was doing. My whole career, I've walked into a TV studio or a radio studio. I've turned on the button.
Yep.
At Morning Report, there was a cast of thousands there. I do my thing. I flap my gums. I do some journalism. I write a story. But other than that, I have no idea technically how any of this stuff works. And I certainly can't keep up at the age of 58.
So when you sign up for your app, this is the first thing you get, right? So I took a screenshot so I get it. And I'll read it for people who are listening on the podcast. So this is a screen grab off the first thing you see on the app. The platform, New Zealand's first free speech media. Kia ora. A bit woke there, using that Māori word. I mean, why would I have to learn Māori? I don't know.
You got the Arity, though.
Why would I have to use the Māori? I don't know what that means. I have to learn Māori to listen to the platform.
Right.
Sheesh,
that's right.
Kia ora. 12 months ago, the platform was just a dream. Now we are here, a unique multimedia platform free of political bias, dedicated to robust debate and not constrained by cancel culture. We intend to ask the tough questions mainstream media are too scared or trapped by government funding to ask. We're not in the pocket of any corporate, and we are not taxpayer funded. We are truly independent. Interesting that you put the taxpayer funding there. 3 paragraphs and mentioned twice government funding. One could argue that you are where you are today primarily, let's be fair, primarily because of your skill set, but certainly helped along the way to who you are today and the profile you have today because of taxpayer-funded broadcasting.
Okay, first job, Radio Windy, literally across the aisle from here in 1984.
Yep.
Then worked in private radio in the Press Gallery.
Yep.
Right, with Barry Soper.
Yep.
Then went to the Auckland Sun newspaper in the Press Gallery with Fran O'Sullivan, private equity. Had a wee stint at Radio New Zealand as a consumer affairs reporter. Back for the launch of TV3 in November of 89, started the Press Gallery in TV3 with Bill Ralston, stayed there in a private capacity for ages. Then went to Fair Go, which was state-funded but commercial broadcasting.
Yep.
Fair Go back to TV3 to do a bit of politics and a bit of current affairs, once again, private sector. And I was working for TV3, and my long stint in the bureaucracy, 13 years on Morning Report, then out of that back into private sector. So actually probably year by year a 50-50 split.
But wouldn't you say, I mean, for me who's hasn't been in media for anywhere near as long as you, but wouldn't it be fair to say that the probably 2 highest profile things from there was RNZ Mornings and Fair Go? I mean, you think
I
about
don't know.
viewership or listenership. No, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that to deny or deride any of your other
Look,
experience.
certainly in Morning Report, and at that stage, of course, it's never rated as well as when the last few years that Jeff and I did it, we killed it.
Yeah, of course.
And it was very much the two of us together. We hit this amazing kind of sweet spot. But I mean, they paid me my money. I took the money. I don't owe them anything.
No. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
don't you see that? Can't you see the irony that some others can see? I see it a bit, that you're now rallying against state funding, and all I'm saying is I'm not, because remember what I did
I'm
say
rallying
was
against state funding with strings attached, Pat.
But remember what I said was the main reason you are where you are is your skill set. That's what I said first.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And then I said, but your profile, there's no question. Your highest profile, well, there is question, but I suggest that your most high profile, most well viewed and listened to product would have been thanks to taxpayer funding. So one of the reasons that you have
doesn't mean I
profiles
have to join the Communist Party, though.
No, not suggesting that. I mean, but why is it that you rally against taxpayer funding? Like, because you're not saying here with strings attached, but full stop. Just like what? So NZ On Air is evil. So if we got money from NZ On Air to do our
if the media were good at doing their job,
yep,
as the fourth estate, they wouldn't need a government subsidy to make money.
Well, but hang on. You guys have got multi-millionaire backers. You haven't gone out into the marketplace and just got sponsorship.
My business partners, and my prime investors are private citizens.
Yeah. But that's not a commercially successful
I do not have a bottomless
operation.
pit of money. In fact, I have very strict financial controls and expectations, and they sit on the board of directors with me. And this is going to be a sustainable business, and it's going to be a business that's going to have to wash its face, pay back its investors, and move to profitability relatively quickly.
But can you not
That's
see
the thing that would keep me up at night if I wasn't sleeping so well.
But can you not see that there is at least some kind of, you may not see it as clearly, a parallel between taking a chunk of money from a family trust out of Tauranga or whatever the details are.
It's their business. Their charitable trust is completely separated from.
Okay,
from
fair enough. I don't need to get into their details, so we won't worry about that. But just say taking a chunk of money to fund something for 2 years, which is what I think you said on RNZ from this area, and taking a chunk of money from this area. I mean, neither of those are a commercially viable entity yet. I mean, yours may grow into that, but you seem to rally against the one from the taxpayer, but be okay with taking it from the private.
Yeah, because the one from the taxpayer comes with strings attached.
Yeah.
And it does not encourage the media business to truly do its job independent of government. It creates a relationship which is erosive to the idea of independent media and an independent fourth estate.
So here's a question for you. How do I know that is the case for you now? How do I know, and I won't even mention their names because I don't want to get into their business, that company X, that are your business partners that have driven money into this.
No, they're people X and they've invested,
haven't got a bottom line that if you went there, they'd have a problem. How do I know that as a potential listener?
Okay, there is a bottom line. I'm going to reveal it to you today.
What's that?
They really don't like swearing.
Yeah, well, there you go. I was going to ask that. If I get up and go, how the fuck are you guys on your broadcast, which is free speech?
I'd rather you didn't say that.
And I was like, I can fuck it. This is fucking free speech. I can fucking you say fucking if I want.
Okay, you can, and you can be free to do that, but we wouldn't have you back on the platform.
Hang on. That's what's weird is why are you allowed to draw? No, I'm being serious now. Why are you allowed to draw a line into this free speech thing all of a sudden of swearing?
Because it's not free speech. It's public decency.
And I've just realised you're never going to play this on your platform now, are you? Because of all my fucks and that I just said. You can beat.
We're going to beat them all out. We're going to beat them all out. I'll have to pay someone to do that. You know, hang on.
You can pay me.
I will have someone to do that. Yeah.
I mean, you do see, I'm sure, that when we start to get into the details of these things, how we make big, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but big grandiose kind of statements about things like free speech or things like, we're not woke and that. But when we actually drill down to it, there are limitations on free speech, and you guys are enforcing some by not allowing that person back on who are...
enforcing. We're asking people not to swear or use foul language.
And if they do, you just said you wouldn't let them back on.
If they do, we'd beep it. We'd say, and I had a caller the other day who said the F word and the S word within 20 seconds. And I said, look, I'm sorry. I warned her after the F word. She said the S word. And I said, look, I've given you a fair crack. I'm just going to have to let you go.
So much like the world that is often rallied against, you also have lines in the sand.
Honestly,
that
Pat,
you won't
if
allow.
this is the best you've got to
No,
catch
I've
me
got
on
nothing.
Wackham's razor, I mean,
I'm not.
I'm so relaxed.
No. I'm not trying to get you, Sean. I'm enjoying the chat. I'm trying to figure this out because what I hear so often, not from you, forget it, but people making, like I said, these big, like, I'm into free speech. It was like, I think it was Rumble did the same thing. They started up this thing for free speech, and then they had all these rules about what you weren't and weren't allowed to do. So we're all putting strings attached to this free speech thing. You guys have got the strings on swearing.
We're just saying we don't encourage it. We'd rather you didn't, and we think for people to ring up and express their ideals and their feelings, even if I completely disagree with them, if they're good ideas and feelings. And I probably personally, compared with my business partners, am more relaxed about that. But there we go. That's a small price to pay for freedom. Freedom comes at a price, Pat. And on the platform, it is that you can't use the F word. So
mostly freedom. Not complete.
Just 1 second, Pat. Liam, I'm doing you on a podcast. So I'm a busy. I'll give you a buzz back, okay? Just sorting them. But see, my work never ends.
It does never end. How do you measure success in this, Sean? It's 18 months in. How do you look back and measure success?
Well, we're operationally, really, we're probably only 4 or 5 months in.
Yeah. I'm saying when you're 18 months in. Yeah. How do you look back?
I've come to the realization there is never going to be a moment when I've climbed this mountain, to be honest.
Right.
This is going to be for the rest of my working life, something that evolves, will probably take on a life of its own, may not have me on air forever, to be honest. And the original plan for me was that I wouldn't be on air, that I could build, the platform and encourage other people. But, we looked at the budget and we looked, to be honest, at my pulling power, and we decided it'd be silly not to have me in. So success looks like we have not a huge slice of the New Zealand media market, but I'll tell you what success looks like. It looks like the last 2 weeks. It looks like us getting Dr. Michael Baker on for 35 minutes in the middle of a breakfast show and having a live interview with him. And really quizzing him about the way we reported COVID death numbers. And yesterday, the Ministry of Health suddenly changing the way it reports COVID death numbers to give the figure of people who've died of COVID as separate from the people who died with COVID. That's what success looked like. Success looks like highlighting a story about Chloe Schwarbrick having a documentary made about her with $220,000 worth of taxpayers' money, and New Zealand on Air, being approved by New Zealand on Air. And once I had exposed that funding, the rest of the world going, that is crazy propaganda and that is bent. And the Herald leading 6 hours later with the story that we had kicked off on my breakfast show on the platform. Success looks like last week saying there was going to be a cash for clunkers scheme in the budget, and Colin Peacock and Media Watch saying, there's no proof of that story. And then on Tuesday, James Shaw announces exactly that, a cash for clunkers scheme. So success is now in that we are engaging the audience. We are telling them stories that mainstream would rather not tell them or has chosen not to tell them, and having a bit of fun and to boot and talking to people like you. That's what success is, and I'm living it every day.
I know. I said we'd talk for about an hour. Have you got 2 more quick questions? Because one of them's just coming from what you've just said. Which was, it's really based on something David Farrier put out over the weekend, and I backed it up because it happened to me with stuff.
David Farrier or Farrier?
Farrier said over the weekend, and also I echoed it because it was something that happened to me as well with some of my content being used by another provider. Are you getting credit when you break stuff by the other media outlets?
Nah, not yet. But
it's pretty piss poor, eh?
Those who know.
Yeah.
Those who know, and this is a long game.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm doing, and literally this was part of my pitch to my business partners, this isn't just about the money. We want to literally change the world. And that if that means moving the dial on our mainstream media back towards what they should be doing, then that is success as well. I don't have to win. I have to change the world. And everyone who works for me gets that this isn't just about sitting back and saying we topped the ratings. Hell, we're not even going to be in the radio ratings, so why should I care? And also, I'll tell you something, and it was kind of profound for me. My late dad was a journo, right? I don't know if you met Pat.
I never met Patrick, no, but I love his name.
Patrick worked in radio. He was the first chief reporter on Morning Report when it first went to air. He was Central New Zealand television editor, and he ended up still plying his trade as a court reporter for the Dom, or the Dom Post. My dad was in television when the Springbok tour kicked off.
Yep.
And after the first protest or so, Pat went to the bosses, I think it was Sean Brown at TVNZ. He said, we've got a problem here. We've only got cameras behind the police lines. So the pictures New Zealanders are seeing every night only show one side, visually show one side of this experience. And he got TVNZ's bosses to agree to hire bodyguards and train reporters and camera crews to be on the other side. And to this day, good Lord, and to this day, we have those pictures that show what really happened, right? The parliamentary protest, we don't largely, because somehow our media lost their way. And it's up to the platform and people like you and people who listen to and engage with the platform and read our stuff. We can change the world for the better. That's what it's about.
I feel like we could have another whole hour conversation around the parliamentary protest, which we're not going. We're not going to do that now.
No.
But the last thing I wanted to ask you was this idea about being free from political bias, and I'll just bring that image up again from your thing.
Yeah.
A unique multimedia platform free of political bias, dedicated to robust debate, etc., etc., etc. Please, I'm not accusing you guys of doing this, but it does sound a little bit like, fair and balanced. It's that idea to a broadcast group that in America isn't. You're a quality broadcaster and a smart man, and like I know, that people tune into radio, even talk radio, not to hear the talkback callers, but to hear the hosts. So when I see that, what I want to see is, if you do this, but that's why Leighton Smith could talk for 19 minutes without a talkback caller and the numbers be strong. People tune into things to hear the hosts over and above the callers or the interviews.
No, I don't know.
Well,
I would pride myself to say at my times in talk radios, I had the highest and generated the highest call-ins and caller volumes ever in talk radio. If I couldn't get 8 people on the line at one time, I felt like I was failing.
No, but that doesn't negate what I said. The people are listening to hear you over and above the callers. You on News Talk ZB doing Wellington Talk were why they were listening, not Jane from Tawa. So in saying that, I guess my ponderance, I don't want to sound like a patronizing dick, Sean, but maybe the challenge is, where are the other voices in the opinion piece on the platform? And I'm not suggesting this is
I guess Annie O'Brien, my gay radical lesbian feminist digital content editor. I guess the young people who are graduates of marketing and 22 years old out there.
But you've already said none of them are woke. Where is your woke on-air opinion talent?
They can ring if they want to. They just haven't clearly got the message and downloaded the app yet. But they're welcome. I think that would be hell of an entertaining.
I agree with you, but what I've just said is the hosts are the reason people drive in. If a platform, not to pun that word, was actually not biased and had all perspectives, I would want to see some hosts there that actually had that perspective to then actually have a proper debate from the position of power, which is the person behind the mic. Like you said, if they swear too many times, they're gone. The people behind the mic have the power. The people who call in and even the interviewees don't have as much. So,
well, I would say that the platform in the pantheon of New Zealand broadcasting does represent a balance.
How so?
That you can't look at the platform alone. You've got to look at it in the context of New Zealand media in which it exists. We're not just balancing ourselves, we're balancing the entire New Zealand media landscape. We are providing a place for voices and ideas that are largely being excluded.
How is that any different, though, from News Talk ZB, let's say, who typically have a right-leaning audience and a right-leaning group of hosts?
News Talk ZB, owned by NZME, who run the Herald, who say they will never publish. They will never publish Michael Bassett again.
But I'm not asking that. I'm saying any person can phone News Talk ZB, whatever position they have, whether they're woke or whether they're conservative or whatever.
Yeah, all they need for News Talk ZB is a heartbeat, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's not my cup of tea either. And in fact, I did a piece the other night on how Kerry Woodham criticised the Herald stupidly not being able to understand numbers and letters. But what I'm saying is any person can phone News Talk ZB and talk to a conservative host or a middling host or whatever. There's no restraints on who can phone in there either. I guess I'm genuinely asking, how are
they
you
are
different?
taking money from the government, though, so they've got to be careful.
How so?
Because NZME is taking money from the government through the Public Interest Journalism Fund.
I would like to continue this conversation as we go on and as I see your platform grow to see how that is actually impacting, let's say, News Talk ZB, or let's say, I don't know too much about Today FM, but News Talk ZB is the monolith, obviously, in that talk area. And I just, when I hear you saying things like, anyone can call in, let's have the debate, doesn't matter where I am, you can provide that's the same as any talkback show. Anyone can call in, anyone can offer those opinions. So I guess I'm just looking.
Damn! I better close it down now.
Hey, Sean, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I mean, I'm
lovely to talk to you, my friend. Lovely.
I've been looking forward to catching you at some stage, and I hope you're okay. But this podcast is platformed on stuff.co.nz. They probably take. Sure,
you didn't tell me that. You've completely misrepresented yourself. As long as you will make a copy available to me to put on the platform.
No problems at all. You will have to do some.
Okay, can I ask you, getting in New Zealand on air funding for it?
I feel like I remember seeing a Louis Theroux documentary when he went and talked to white supremacists, and they asked him if you're Jewish, and he went, "I don't feel like I can answer that question to keep the."
Are you receiving any money from the taxpayer? No.
No, of course not.
Good on you. You're clean skin.
No, but that's not well. But you know what? If I had a product. But I would.
Yeah.
I would.
I'm not going to say anything about your principles until next time.
I also am happy to work in the commercial sector, which is what I'm doing right now. But it would be nice.
Well, we should have a talk about some content sharing.
Oh well,
we should have a talk about getting you on the platform to be one of those diverse voices. That's exactly what it's there for, Pat.
I think the problem with me, Sean, is I'm not that diverse. I'm logic. I mean, look at me. I'm certainly not. I'm white and mostly ginger from my Irish roots. But when it comes to my opinion is often based in logic, which often comes off as kind of centrism. A lot of people think I'm a lefty through and through, but I look at issues day by day. And I've been derided as being anti-union, and I've been by
You're
some.
You're not woke enough. You're not woke enough to really get inside the beltway, mate.
Dude, but I'm not. But following your definition and those 40 different labels, you could slide me in there somewhere. But there are other areas that I'm completely the opposite of, which is the difficulty of trying to pigeonhole people. That's my thing. I'm difficult to pigeonhole.
Well said, and we all should be. Hey, thanks,
Sean,
Pat. That was lovely.
Yeah, it's been great, mate. And we'll talk sometime, and all the best. And I look forward to using some of your commentary in my daily show to reflect what you guys say. Don't make me learn that. I don't know what that means. All right, Sean.
See ya.
See you, mate.